Anu and Justine with our new episode about health and well-being. Health and well-being are quite popular now. It comes from every angle. Everyone's got an idea how they can contribute to health and well-being, or let's everyone, but lots of media led conversation around health and well-being. But let's see what it means in terms of Ayurveda. What do you think, Justine? What do you think about well-being? Are you feeling well?
I'm feeling well. Luckily, I have pretty good immunity, so I'm not under the weather so often.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were just chatting before we started recording, and this I think is an important topic because it's not really discussed that much. And there's there is sometimes a divide between the two, especially when we're looking at allopathic medicine and looking at traditional medicines. There's maybe not so much talk when you go to the allopathic doctor about wellness per se, where maybe when somebody comes for Ayurveda consultation, there's a lot of focus on the wellness part. Of course, we have the medicinal aspect as well, because that's supported and needed. But yeah, the wellness angle is something that's maybe talked more in traditional medicine.
Yeah. I think that kind of the wellness is some sort of a blanket term to anything that is not allopathic, almost like that well-being. Under the wellness, there's so much that you can kind of think about, different kind of activities that you put into what is, how do you create wellness? Is there exercise, or is it nutrition, or something like that? But if you think about concept of well-being, just being in the wellness, I guess that's the being is quite an easy kind of build a bridge to Ayurveda, because Ayurveda really is about being with your feelings. So do you feel well? And so if you think about health and well-being is really independent about health, because you might have a disorder or disease or imbalance or something going on with your body that you couldn't be, let's say, classified as healthy, or 100%. You might have diabetes, you might have Crohn's disease, you might have chickenpox, for all that matter, and most likely within that disease manifestation you might have well-being, or at least moments of well-being. So well-being really is a feeling, and it's independent of disease. Sometimes, often is.
Yeah, I think it makes me think of some clients that I have, for example, that are going through chemo. And of course, that's very challenging and taxing on the body. You feel terrible, after the round, usually a week afterwards. And, I have clients and they come, they want to feel good treatment. They want to have somebody touch them, put hands on the body, because they're being brutalized by the chemo so much. To have something opposite, so we talk about Ayurveda and the opposites a lot. And I think those moments when they are feeling good in their body, they say they're able to then often feel good until the next round. So they may not be technically well, because they have cancer and they're going through chemo, but once they get through the really bad symptoms, then often I think they sometimes have the most positive attitudes out of any of my clients, which is amazing. I couldn't imagine being positive and having that kind of outlook when you have been diagnosed with something so detrimental.
Yes. And yeah, that's a really interesting and important point that you put, especially with cancer patients, because often the survival from cancer cases, even fourth stage cancer, is dependent on suddenly people achieving well-being, and the body relaxes and starts self-regulating and starts healing itself and turning things around. So you might have a very advanced state of cancer, like this summer I met a friend, and she had stage 4 cancer, and she's turned everything around. Her intestines were pretty much done for, and she's now turned things completely around, and she's healing. They call her a super healer or something. Responding very well to therapy, and so that is just a kind of testimony of the body's own ability to heal itself. But it requires a certain moment that comes and takes away the fear, because fear is the opposite of well-being, isn't it? Or let's say fear is opposite of love, but it also often is within the feeling of well-being that you feel love as well. It's self-love, at least love of nature, love of everything, or whatever it is, universal or individual. It usually is that defining moment of remission or turning things around is a sudden loss of fear, and then like enlightenment. Lots of people have these almost like divine interventions. They feel like they have achieved something, a different kind of connection, once they have let go of the fear of cancer, and then the body does the rest. It's astonishing how that can happen. But yeah, that you could classify the body as not healthy, but
exactly,
still,
that's actually a prime example of classifying that's not healthy. But like you said, your friend went into remission. So yeah, like you said, that fear and fear and love, the balance, right, between the two. So again, Ayurveda and the opposites. So body is in a fear state, let's say during cancer. That's pretty obvious. So what would the opposite be of that? Would be love. And I think often when people do get in the situations with cancer, it often has been that they've been really in traumatic situations, fearful situations. They haven't loved themselves. Their sense of self has been very low. So I think that's a very good example. And as you know, we've seen people also going into remission just from sitting in long bouts of meditation. Maybe they start very slowly and it builds up to very long sittings, and the power of the mind, right, to change and to heal. Like the body really does know how to heal itself, but if it is in a constant stress and fear state, it can't heal itself.
You have to create conditions for the body to heal itself, and on the physiological level, you're basically to allow the body to heal itself. You have to kind of manipulate your autonomic nervous system, which controls your relaxed tension effect in your body. So in a state of fear or in a negative state, you create tension. So the shrotas, Ayurvedically speaking, the channels of circulation, when the fear state comes in, and the shrotas, they get tighter. So the lumen, the narrows of the gut and the blood vessels and lymphatics and nerve conduct is impaired or slower or in existence. And so the shrotas, they don't circulate water, food, and nutrients, oxygen, all sorts of things come after that when tissues do not receive and dispel what needs to be dispelled. So in that way, so when we have well-being, so when we are in that state of relaxation, because your well-being is state of relaxation, which means that you're safe and comfortable. So well-being really kind of, if you start breaking it down, when you feel safe and comfortable and you're at peace, that means that is the state where everything relaxes. The gut starts pushing forward normally, the blood circulates, the lymphatics stay drained, the toxins, and the nerve conduct is good, hormones circulate in a way. So all those elements that carry information, carry nutrients, and excess out of the body, it becomes optimal in that state because everything is relaxed. So But when you get into fear, and especially when you have serious disease going on, dangerous situations, lots of stress, the state of tension, which is healthy to have as well, because obviously the walls of the blood vessels, they need to do this. So that's the tension release, but they get tense chronically. They stay in a state of tension, and then that pumping action, is less elastic, and then blood pressure goes up, and for example, one scenario. So when the tension becomes chronic and constant, then healing is not possible. Auto-regulation is, self-regulation is less efficient, and different kind of scenarios can then happen. Like body is not able to self-regulate the way it's designed to do, but every cell is willing to live. And so cancer really is a manifestation of a cell's will to live. I want to live in my environment is difficult. I can't do, my normal tasks, so I'm going to mutate. Mm-hmm. Mutates. The mutation is really not death of a cell. It's a survival mechanism of a cell. And it's a manifestation of body's will to live. But then the cancer cell is not part of the system anymore. So it doesn't, it has now a rapidly multiplying ability, and then it will eventually destroy the system. However, at first, if you look at it, cancer is only a boosted self-regulation, but not as a part of the system. So it's really important to have well-being, aim for well-being with our diet and lifestyle, constantly trying to make sure that our default setting is well-being, and that relaxed tension is balanced, that we tense only to the extent that is necessary to carry out our activity, because any activity is tension. So if I do this now, obviously I'm tensing my muscles and stretching and extending certain things, so there's tension. So that serves my purpose. It helps me to convey my message a bit better. But so this kind of tension is obviously necessary, but mainly these kind of tensions, they still serve the purpose of keeping your mind relaxed, because when the mind is relaxed, everything flows.
Mm-hmm. And when you're mentioning this movement and just tension, obviously we think of exercise as being the more extreme example of that. And I think now we're really in a culture of over exercising, putting a lot of stress on making sure you get to the gym and exercising.
No pain, no gain.
Yeah, exactly. I've noticed that from my clients a lot. When I start asking about their exercise, what kind of movement that they do, because, I'm not promoting that they have to go to a gym, but we've got to check in and see that they're moving the body in some way, right? So I can tell that people get a little stressed when that subject comes up, because they do feel a lot of pressure culturally that, they're supposed to, look a certain way and be a certain way, especially women's bodies, that they shouldn't have curve, they should be more muscular. Nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. And it's taken such extreme, we don't have to exercise to the extent. Obviously it's fun if you have stamina. If you have stamina and you go and exercise to your stamina, that, it should be fun, it should be enjoyable, and not like you go to gym and come out and enjoy only the after effects. You should be having fun during the exercise. Otherwise, it's stressful and it's inflammatory. And so lots of people who exercise a lot do not enjoy the exercise itself, and they have an inflammatory exercise that causes even more tension than it is. So and also they push their limits too much, so they go beyond their stamina. So for example, going for a run, and if you can't breathe more or less through your nose, and you just push and push and go into a stitch, you feel your stomach going rounds. It's off-putting, isn't it? On itself, and dangerous for health.
Mm-hmm. And Ayurveda recommends 30% one direction, 30% back of your maximum stamina.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go for a run, you don't go to 50% there and 50% back of what you can do, right? So I always try to remind people of that. And the breathing, yeah, with the mouth closed and through the nose. Once you stop or break that nose breathing, then you are getting in that inflammatory stress.
Yeah.
Like you said.
So yeah, I mean, lots of people exercise to achieve well-being, but it can be a very stressful activity for them unless it's well designed to fit the requirements of the body, or the limits of the body. But yeah, I think it's interesting to kind of think if you think about what we talked in our last podcast about gunas, is that the law of opposite, like the fear and love, but we have hot and cold, we have dry and moist, and heavy and light. So we have all these kind of feelings that we feel constantly. And if you think about like hot and cold, it's two opposites at the end of a spectrum. And somewhere within that spectrum is your well-being. So, and that well-being, that kind of the place where your well-being is, changes all the time. It changes depending on what the context is, what the environment is like. So if you have this spectrum of hot and cold, and your context is you're in northern Finland in February, you're probably going to be on this hot, you're warm, you need more warmth. So you prefer more of the warm comforts. Or if you're in Southern Europe now, you probably gravitate towards the cooler options. So you prefer one or the other. So the well-being is never a fixated state of being. Sometimes you like it hot, sometimes you don't. And it's all kind of a floating feeling that depends on where you are and who you hang out with, what are you reading, what are you watching, what are you hearing, what are your senses saying. So it really is, if you go into Ayurvedic diet and lifestyle, their play of gunas is a play of coming to a place of well-being where you feel safe and comfortable. Nothing's bothering you, and your body is able to allow the shrotas to flow, nourishment, gut, toxins, and so on.
Yeah, I really like that you brought the srotas into this. So the channels in the body, we talk about this a lot when I'm doing, say, a treatment for somebody. I like to be able to read the body as I'm working with somebody, and sort of, I can often see like where some of the issues might be, even if they're not sure themselves. We can see something like maybe they're not breathing properly, like taking full breaths throughout the day. Maybe they're really shallow breathers and they never really thought about that before, because we can see maybe a little tension in the diaphragm area, when we're trying to massage, below the rib area. It can be really tense there. Or some people even report having pain in those areas, and they're worried. They're like, is there something wrong with my liver? Like, why is it so tender and sore here? Yeah. And it could be, really that the diaphragm is just really constricted there.
Yeah.
So I try to give people tips on how each individual can put some well-being or relaxation into their daily routine. So, for somebody like that, I'm really going to recommend pranayama, for example, right? Breathing exercise, to focus on that.
Yeah.
Or somebody that, their nervous system is really fried, let's say. I'll say, maybe let's put a strap around your ankles before you fall asleep, having the feet together to reset the nervous system, keep it on for minutes, maybe even fall asleep with it on. So some things, because I can't change somebody's home environment or their job or these kind of fearful or stressful lifestyles that they might be living in, but at least we can give them some tips on some things that they can do on their own.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the routines, timing things right and being seasonal is a huge help for the mind to perceive safety. Because when you have like routines, timed activities, you don't have to guess what's happening next. You know what's happening next. You know what's the next milestone in your life. You know when you're going to do this. So the mind doesn't have to worry all the time. What's going to happen next? What I'm going to do next? Yeah. So you have a structured life. And within that structure, you can obviously put randomness in between those certain milestones that you achieve every day. But once you perceive that, okay, I know what's going to happen, I would own control of your days to the extent that mind doesn't have to guess all the time, or, you know, what should I do now? What's next? That the shrotas again, you know, benefit from this a lot, and they allow self-regulation. It really is just like, for a long time when I studied, you know, from the start, I didn't really think about the Shrota thing that much, but now I more and more understand it's all about how you regulate the you know, Shrota tension.
Yeah, like I said, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think that gets kind of overlooked a lot when people are talking about data and
yeah.
other podcasts.
Yeah.
And the seasonal thing, I was just about to bring that up, and I know we're probably going to bring that up every episode, because I think you and I are really on the same page with that. Is that if you do live in tune with the seasons, these seasonal rhythms, they naturally fall into place. Like you said, there's not surprise. You know what's happening next. But we are so far removed from nature that the body is like, what's next? Like, what's happening now? And especially when you're not eating seasonal foods, you know, putting some food in there, and the body is like, what? See, is this winter? You know, in the springtime, for example.
Yeah.
It's quite confusing. So I think that's a really good start for people. Like, if they're not sure where to start, maybe they can't come for some body treatments. Maybe they can't invest too much in themselves at the moment. Like, where to start is to get seasonal.
Yeah.
And for some people that does take education, you know, which we both offer that. But sometimes it's just simple as being barefoot outside in the warmer season, you know, taking off the shoes more. And during the cooler seasons, you know, doing appropriate things to nourish the body during that time. You know, it doesn't have to require a lot of money or research.
Yeah, and everyone goes to the shops more or less daily basis. You know, just choose seasonal items, and so, you know, start timing your things right. So that's where you're doing a huge step towards Ayurvedic living already in that way. So it doesn't have to, you know, to don't do any tricks of the trade. You just kind of learn how to live along with the seasons, and that's how you start preparing for the well-being or for the season to come, but also obviously live according to the rules of the season. And yeah, it's kind of, Ayurveda is prescriptive medicine, isn't it? So it really kind of, with this anticipation, you know, knowing if I do this, then I know that this is going to happen. If I eat hot, then, you know, I'm going to get more hot. If I do cool, and if I live this way in spring, I know in summer I'm going to be that way. So you think about the future, what's going to come next. You know, if I don't change my behavior now, I know that next time I could get, you know, next morning I might have, you know, colds. You know, you got a chill and so on. So it's interesting in a way that you can kind of predict future with Ayurvedic living.
Yeah, we're like killers.
Yeah, exactly. And that on its own is very comforting, because I know if I do this, and that's going to happen. So, so that again is another factor that provides safety and comfort, provides the feeling of, you know, contributes to the feeling of well-being. Knowing and not being like, I don't know what I should eat, I don't know what I should be doing, what should I be, because my dosha is this and that.
Oh yeah,
so it's too complicated. It's like, just go and look at this, what is seasonal thing, and how do you time things right, and that's where it all starts. And leave those doshas to us practitioners. We deal with them. And look at the feelings, the gunas that we always want, you know, apply in every situation.
People go to the shop every day. Is that what you said? That people are going to the food shop? Is that what you meant? Like every day?
Yeah. You're going to go and do groceries. Yeah, you buy your groceries, buy seasonal groceries. Do not choose the, pineapples in spring, do that because they don't, if they're not even local. Obviously, it's fine to have pineapples, even if they don't grow in your back garden. But they are, now is the season for pineapples soon. Yeah. And or say avocado in spring, or grapes in spring, or potatoes, or having asparagus now. It's well, still you can make more or less maybe, but it's a more spring thing. And having tomatoes in January, it's not really the thing, but unless it's jarred.
I was asking about the food shop thing because you're right. I think a lot of people do shop like every day. So I'm going to give a tip that works for me, and I think has worked for a lot of my clients too, is don't go to the food shop every day, because you can try to plan a few days in advance and go every few days. That's going to save you a lot of time, and there's not going to be so much guesswork in your eating.
Yeah.
Because I think what happens is people just go to the shop and they're like, I'm here, what do I buy? And they're usually really hangry at that point. They just want to grab something quick. But if you commit to buying food for a few days, you're committed to making those meals that you bought the ingredients for. And if you're like me, you're going to feel bad if the food goes bad, like if you don't cook it, because you've invested into buying it. So that's a tip that I've given for some people.
Yeah,
and that's not going to work for every single person, but I think it can be helpful for some to do a short few days.
And you can cook bigger amounts of food and put them into freezer. And so some Ayurvedic will say that, it becomes tamasic, but it's not really the case. Freezing slows down that process of food becoming tamasic. Tamasic is like, if you leave food on a table overnight, that would be something that increases the tamas quite fast. But with freezing and fridge do slow the process down quite significantly. In the olden times when Ayurvedic Bibles were written, there were no freezers. The only way to keep food was on the table. So, but yes, I mean, if you're a busy person and you have no options, cooking big batches is pretty good way to ensure that you eat food that you've taken prepared yourself, and exactly what is in there, and it's always available.
Exactly. Of course, your own homemade frozen food is going to be better than ready-made food or processed food always.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I always make that exception with frozen food when people ask about it. I'm like, if you've made it yourself, frozen food definitely fits in to Ayurvedic cooking.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And somebody was like, oh, my husband's a hunter, and all our meat is frozen. I'm like, then make that what all the frozen food you eat. Maybe just don't eat a lot of other frozen food, but all your meat is frozen, because you're getting wild.
Yeah.
Getting the soul of the animal is free, that's much better than buying fresh, factory farmed meat even.
Absolutely.
So
everything's relative, isn't it?
Yeah. There's like, bending these rules. Like you said, they didn't have freezers when the Ayurvedic texts were written. There's something to look at there.
Yeah.
Sure.
We need to practice always. It's applied Ayurveda. Ayurveda is very applicable, in any situation, and it has to be applied. Otherwise, you might get into trouble with your food, trying to too methodically follow something that was appropriate 5,000 years ago. It is not not appropriate today. But I think now our time has come to an end. But last thing I wanted to say about health and well-being is that if you go into allopathic medicine, or let's say you go to your GPs, your doctor's appointments, and complain about, I'm not feeling well, and they do all the tests and come up saying it's like there's nothing wrong with you. You can work. There's we can't see any evidence of you having a disease. But you still say that, well, there is something wrong with me because I'm not feeling well. But it's just like kind of those subclinical, undiagnosable states of being are to a large extent ignored in the Western approach, because there's no understanding. So the sense of well-being is a mental thing. It's a feeling. So if you don't feel well, it cannot be necessarily measured from your blood or, look at your organ function. So
I'd say
the power of Ayurveda, where you really go into understanding from tiniest imbalances, you have the power to heal those with the principle of opposites and achieve well-being and have no need to go to and ask someone what's wrong with me. Because when you go and see the gunas, okay, this guna is too much. I'm too hot. There's too much heat, too much inflammation, or too much congestion, too much heaviness. Lighten up or cool down. And, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for those people who they just know there's something wrong, they just don't feel good in their body, even though they're told repeatedly by doctors that they're fine. I've been in that position before. If you go see a doctor of Chinese medicine or of Ayurveda, they're going to be able to look at the more subtle aspects of the body, help you out there. Just look at your own tongue. Does your tongue look healthy? If your tongue looks like a nightmare, you really maybe should seek some traditional medicine advice. Yeah, because the tongue functions a lot. So I think everybody should be looking at their tongues a lot more. I look at mine daily. I see the changes daily, and I know I'm like, okay, I did that. I can see it on my tongue the next day.
I always say to my clients that, think about a bus. A bus. So appetite, bowel, urine, and sleep. If all of these are fine, you're most likely to, these are the kind of main definers of well-being. And if I have to take a consultation really quickly, these 4 things: appetite, bowel, urine, and sleep. And so if appetite's fine, you go to the toilet normally, bowel and urine doesn't smell, there's no too much frequency, and you sleep really well. And that's well, usually is, kind of say, I'm feeling quite well, with that. That should be kind of a definer of blanket well-being, let's say. But then, in Western approaches, are you able to work? So if you're capable of going to work, then that's the defining life of health, and that's often quite dubious. Some people really are poorly, and they are still forced to go to work.
Yes, that's unfortunate, and I do have a lot of clients that have been recovering from burnout. I have a few great clients that come to prevent burnout, which is they know they're kind of on the edge. They're coming regularly just to keep that burnout away. So those are some other tips too.
But yes, so well-being is a relative concept. It's contextual, and it's a feeling. It's a feeling that is always on the move. As we know, the only constant is change, and that is valid also for our feeling of well-being. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast has been brought to you by Anu Paavola and Justine Cederberg, both Ayurvedic practitioners. The information provided in this podcast is for general information purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider regarding any medical condition or concerns you may have.